Yeah, man. You already know what it is, man. DJ Jerry, aka the voice of the streets. It's that Mixtape Trappers Radio, man. I got a special guest in the building right now, man. Tony Cotton, man. What's happening?
What's up? Thanks for having me in here, Jerry.
What's good, man?
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, man.
Could have put a face with the name.
Yeah, definitely, man. Like, even like with you, man, I swear I've been hearing about you for years, man. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, dealing with clients, you know what I'm saying, for years, decades, man.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
I've been a lawyer for almost 20 years now, so
Wow.
it took a few years to get my name out there, but then once I don't advertise, so once it started, it just continued to grow from there.
Definitely. Yeah, but let us know, for the people that don't know who Tony Cotton is, let them know who you is.
Yeah, sure. I'm a criminal defense attorney,
Yeah.
and I practice in Wisconsin. So I only practice in Wisconsin, not out of state. But I do state and federal cases, and basically I've carved out sort of a niche in doing, I would say, primarily drug and gun stuff. I do other things. Yeah, I handle all types of cases, but mostly my focus has been drugs, guns, violent crime, and things like that.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
I've been doing this for 19 years, graduate from Marquette Law School.
Wow.
I'm born and raised in the area, and got offices in Waukesha and here in Wauwatosa on 70th and North Avenue.
Okay, that's nice. Yeah, because I think I was reading, but correct me if I'm wrong, but your parents were attorneys too, right?
Yeah, my dad was a garbage man and my mom was a lawyer. So,
wow, okay.
So different career paths. My dad always said, follow your mom's path. So, so it's like, that made a lot of sense.
Definitely.
So she was my inspiration. My mom went to law school when she was older, like later in life, like in her 30s. And so she became a lawyer when I was in high school. And she became really good at it. My stepdad, her second husband, was a defense attorney, and the three of us ended up starting a practice together.
Yeah, that's what's up. Yeah, but like what's some of the rappers? I don't know if you know if they're rappers or not, but like, what's some clients that you have, like, those rappers that you can say?
Yeah, so I mean, that's the part of the problem is I don't always know people's career, or if they are on a rapper. I mean, the way people come to me, believe it or not, is they call me, they give me just their regular name, I look up the case, and I dive into it. And so I never tried to represent rappers as a group necessarily. Okay. And I don't know that I've represented so many. I could name off a dozen right now that I've learned over the years are well-known rappers in the community. Whether they would want me to speak about that, I'll leave it to them if you want to interview them on a separate date.
Definitely. Yeah, but I know one that won't mind is Guapo Chapo, man.
Yeah,
shout out Guapo.
Guapo's a great guy.
Yeah.
We beat his federal case a year or two ago now.
Yeah.
And he's a great guy, and his brother Looney, who obviously I represented as well. So I know that family, and both great guys.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
I saw he was on your show after he beat that case.
Yeah,
he called me actually from here. I think he was probably at this table.
Yeah,
when he
at this table called you, put your speakerphone, man.
And that's because I try to be accessible. It's like one of the things I pride myself on is, there's different ways you can practice law.
Yeah.
And you can give it your all. You can give it 50%. You can give it 5%. Well, it's whatever you want to make of it. Right. And criminal defense is a crazy field because, like, you're representing human beings. You're representing people that are just like you. They got families, they got careers, they got interests, they got passions that they're pursuing. And I've always decided that rather than being one of these lawyers who's like closed off in some office somewhere, not accessible, I wanted to be like, if someone's paying me a lot of money to take on the case, or even if they're not paying a lot of money, like even if I chose to do something for free, I'm their lawyer and they should have access to me. And it's a balancing act. So I tell, whether it's Guapo or anybody else, I'm like, people can call me on my cell phone. They can reach out to me pretty much 24/7. And I found that most people don't abuse that. Like most people, if they just the comfort of knowing I can call Tony if I got a problem, they won't blow you up. Like if you answer your call and you just answer a question, it takes 5 minutes usually for most situations. So that's like with Guapo when he called me from your show. It wasn't surprising he could do that because most of my clients have access to me whenever they need to.
That's nice, man. Yeah, but like you said, you've been practicing for almost 20 years.
Yeah.
Like, out of your whole, you know what I'm saying, practicing, like, is there any cases that you like, with the evidence that's with this case, I kind of don't even want to take it. Is there any cases that you never wanted to take?
Nobody's ever asked me that question before. It's one of the best questions I've ever been given. Yes, there are certain cases that you look at them and you say, and I've said to people, I don't want to take this on. I'm not the right person. Okay. Something that jumps out to me just like right off the top of my head is before, and people can be falsely accused, as we all know.
Definitely.
I never know someone calling me if they did it or didn't do it. But something that just for me that jumps out is like child sex assault stuff. they need a good defense, and some did it and some didn't. But before I had kids, it was real easy for me to take those cases, and I would beat them, and I'd go to trial, and we were winning a lot of trials. Then I had kids, and it hit differently. It hit closer to home, and I thought to myself, unless if I can't do if there's even 1% of me that can't get isn't 100%, even 1%, even if I'm 99 instead of 100, I got to step away and there's plenty of lawyers out here who can do that type of work. So that's like one category where I sort of stepped back and said, I just don't think I'm necessarily the right guy on every one of those cases. I'll still take some, but case by case.
Yeah, it makes sense, man. Because I got 2 daughters too. I got 2 daughters and a son, man.
Yeah.
And I know it could happen with any gender, but like just my daughters, man. Like they the oldest, so like I don't know. It just make me like it make me hate like sex offenders. You know what I'm saying? Like especially when you have your own kids and you see how shit go. Like
right.
Like it just like even I done caught like older guys like looking at my young daughter and I'm like, dude, like it's weird.
Yeah,
as fuck. Like,
I know.
You know what I'm saying?
I know.
So, yeah, that's
and
weird.
I the way I always approach things is like when people call me, like people reach out to me sometimes through Instagram, sometimes they go to my website, sometimes they call me. But when people reach out, whatever type of case it is, I at least try to have either my staff or me hear it out. And I would say that I'm really reluctant to get involved in cases where I feel like there's not going to be a two-way street of respect.
Yeah.
That I can sense that stuff pretty quickly now at this point in my career. When somebody just looks at it as transactional, I give you 50,000, you're going to get me this result. Like I don't like doing business that way.
Right.
Yes, we have to generate money to pay my staff and all the attorneys, and we got to earn a good living. But there's more to it than that. We also want to provide a good service, and it's hard to provide a good service when you don't jive with the person.
Yeah.
So I always try to. There's that part of it too. Sometimes it's just not the right fit. Like sometimes I'm not the right lawyer, and the client would realize that. And other times I can realize this is not the right client.
Definitely. Yeah, I know it might be kind of a stupid question, but I know they say all questions aren't stupid. But like, obviously, for somebody that's a criminal, like, why is it important to have a lawyer or attorney?
Yeah, so I would just modify your question a little bit to say an accused criminal.
Okay.
You're only a criminal if you're convicted, right? So I mean, I think the way I would look at it is everybody ought to have a relationship in some way with a lawyer. Now that's easier said than done. I grew up with a mom who became a lawyer, so I had one right in my family. But I think that even if a person doesn't know a lawyer, they should at least know to call one. It used to be opening a phone book. Now it might be going on Instagram. Now it might be going on the internet. But you need to start calling around and talking to people, because when the police are looking at you or have charged you with a crime, the lawyer is the only thing between you and the prison cell. And sometimes you get what you pay for, sometimes you don't. But I always tell everybody the best way to figure that out is to do your research and talk to multiple people. Because if you just, and maybe I'm the right fit for a person, maybe I'm not, but I tell people who call me, if you're good to go and you want this representation, that's fine. But I encourage people to make phone calls and talk to other people. There's a lot of decent lawyers out there of different price points. When I came out of law school, my prices were rock bottom. You couldn't even believe it, what they were. And now they might be considered high. So you got to really look for what can I afford,
right,
and then try to fit it together from there.
Right. That's nice, yeah, man. Because a lot of people, some people don't have money for a lawyer, and they were like, man, I'm just settle for a public defender.
Yes, and there's some really good public defenders. That's the thing. There's some really, it's a weird world I live in, because there's some private lawyers who are really, really shitty. And there's some public defenders who are shitty. There's also some public defenders who are exceptional in private lawyers. So it's like there's exceptional in both fields. There's shitty in both fields. The only way as a client you'll figure that out is by taking the time to make the calls. Who answers your call? Who's responsive? Who seems to care? Who has a track record? And ask questions. I tell people, like, it shouldn't just be me talking at the client. Like, they can ask the lawyer, hey, what do you think I should be doing in this situation? It's a two-way street.
Definitely. Yeah. But like, what do you think? Like, so far, what do you think is the biggest case that you've been a part of so far?
There have been so many. I think that there was, a lot of people heard about the Slender Man case in Waukesha. That was a huge one over and had national, international attention. The mayor of Milwaukee years ago was attacked outside State Fair. That was sort of my first high-profile case when I was a new lawyer. Tom Barrett was the mayor of Milwaukee, and he had gotten assaulted with a tire iron outside State Fair. It was brutal assault. And the public defender's office called me up I was like 2 years out of law school. They called me up and asked if I would take this appointment, and I said yes.
Yeah.
I walked into a firestorm. I mean, I was like cameras in my face, media frenzy, being put on the news. And so, and I thought I did a good job under the circumstances. It was a hard case. I mean, but that was high profile. The Slender Man was high profile. And then it used to be things were high profile if they were on the news. Now what I've learned is like things become high profile within communities. Like you brought up the rapper thing before.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe how many people started to reach out to me because they heard I had represented so-and-so. And they say, well, to us that, to my group who follows Chicken P or Guapo or whoever, some of the big ones, they say, hey, that's to me a very big case if you're handling that person's matter.
Definitely a big case. Yeah. With the Slenderman, like how long did that case actually last?
That case is technically still going on. So it lasted about, I would say 4 years, 4 years or maybe 5 years for me to get the case worked out so that she could not be found guilty of the attempted homicide. So we were able to get her some mental health treatment and get her into a facility. That's not the end of the story, though. Once a person's getting mental health treatment, if they're found not guilty by reason of mental disease or defect, then they go into treatment, and then you got a petition to get them out. So that's technically still going on where we're trying to petition to get her out. I sort of also have specialized in a lot of mental health related cases, largely stemming from that.
That's crazy because when I seen it, I just was like, wow, like I didn't know how the case was going to go or end.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I was watching it on the news back then when it was going on, like
a lot of
it
things
was fresh.
Yeah, and that's a good point. A lot of things look overwhelming right out of the gate, like they have all the evidence or the media paints it a certain way.
Yeah,
and you think, they're going to fry this person.
Yeah,
every case I've ever started out, whether it was that one or any other case, when I first read the criminal complaint or what the prosecution says happened. I think probably 100% of the cases I've thought to myself, this person's screwed. Like that's initially in that I don't want to say it should be how it is, but like if they're going to charge them with a crime, they better have at least some story that the public could say, well, that I understand why they charged this person.
Yeah.
But that's like 1% of the story.
Yeah.
Then you got to get into the reports, and that's where I think we've really set ourselves apart and tried to be exceptional is doing that deep dive through all the material to really find sometimes that one little angle. The missing video, the exculpatory DNA report. There's a lot of things you can look for that blow a case apart.
Definitely.
And any screw up, to your question before of like, why does someone need a lawyer?
Yeah.
You need a lawyer because, let me give you a hypothetical.
Okay.
Cops run into, name a person's home. They run into a home. They find a kilo of cocaine in that house. They charge the person who's there with those drugs. Cops had a search warrant. A lawyer. So the person might be caught red-handed. They're in the home, the cocaine's there, the person's trying to flush it down the toilet when the cops run in. Like, just because you're caught red-handed doesn't mean you'll be convicted. That could be a defective search warrant. The affidavit could have inaccurate information. The investigation might be screwed up in some way. The person in the home might have a story of, they were trying to dispose of evidence, but they weren't the dealer. So just because it looks bad or seems bad, I want to encourage people that even if you feel like, hey, they got me, it looks really terrible. Maybe they did. I'm not saying everybody's going to walk on every case. Right. I don't walk everybody.
Right.
But a skilled lawyer and a trained lawyer can look at that and say, well, here's the angle to maybe, even if we can't beat it, maybe we can get that DA down or that judge to give you a year or probation or, it's a difference between walking out of court and doing 8 years sometimes.
Definitely.
So you have to define wins in a broad context. Sometimes we win because we beat the case.
Yeah.
Sometimes you win because your client walks out of court not in prison.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and that's what was my next question too, because in our community, taking a plea deal or making a statement like that's considered snitching. You know what I mean? So, do you? I don't want to say encourage people to take a plea deal or make a statement, but like. Do you see like, okay, sometimes this is the best result, and I feel like you should take a plea deal or a statement in some situations?
So making a statement, almost never. Taking a plea deal, every single case, I would say almost every time we have a discussion about that. But there's a difference between being a snitch and making statements on others versus accepting responsibility for what a person did. I found that over the years, a lot of times I'm able to work good deals for people because I have relationships with prosecutors, judges know me, and I think I'm good at what I do.
Definitely.
And so I go to people and I say, hey, look, I think we got this argument, or we could beat the case if we take this risk, but here's what they're offering you. And I know, based on my experience with this judge, you'll probably walk out of court with probation.
Yeah.
And so I give people, all my clients make the final choice. I never ever tell a person 100% that they have to do a certain thing. But different cases, I will put different amounts of pressure on people if I think it's in their best interest to go a certain direction. I don't like to leave it up to I know the client makes a final decision about trial or plea deal, but most people haven't been through this before.
Right.
And they're really hiring you to give them, not to tell them what to do, but to try to get them to go to the right point. And you can't get there unless you have trust with people. And you can't get trust with people unless you actually spend the time working with them. That's why if you just sign someone up and 2 weeks later you ram into telling them to take some plea deal, like that's just, you shouldn't do business that way unless there's an exceptional circumstance. That's
right.
like, you're not going to develop a relationship with the client.
Definitely.
So when you asked about Slender Man, like, why did that case take 5 years, or why is it still going on 10 years later?
Yeah.
Sometimes cases wrap up quickly, and I usually charge flat fees. It's usually somebody's just paying, a certain amount to handle all the way through. I'll do what it takes to get them the best outcome. So I don't ever make the advice to a person or give the advice to a person, hey, wrap this up, because I'm thinking in the back of my head, I want to cash out and just be done with the case. Like, I would develop a shitty reputation real quickly if I did that. Yeah. So I think it's important to charge fees. Obviously, you didn't ask this, but they're like high enough so that you don't ever have that feeling of like, oh, I didn't charge what I should, and now you're dealing with competing interests. Like, you got to just stay zeroed in on what's best for the client.
Definitely. Yeah, I was gonna ask you, but you kind of answered it already. You answered my question already, man.
Yeah.
Well, what I had next, man, was basically like, I know you know it, but it's probably I don't know if it's still bad as it was, but like 2016, 17, but it's a lot of dirty cops. You know what I'm saying? In Milwaukee,
it was bad back then,
yeah,
for sure.
2016, 2017, there's a lot of dirty cops.
That was the Vagnini thing where he had accused of the searches, the illegal search.
Yeah, but you just being an attorney, like, how hard is it to convict a crooked cop? Like, because I don't think people understand how hard that might can be.
Very hard.
Yeah.
And to be clear, I represent all types of people, and I've also been asked to represent police officers behind the scenes when they've had their own problems, and so I try to pass some. And again, some people are wrongly accused, right? Yeah. But we know that there have been dirty cops, and we've seen it before, and we've seen that some of them have been held accountable. I think one of the things that has happened lately has been the proliferation of body cam footage. That's been a good thing. When I started out as a lawyer, even when people would sit down in an interrogation room, they wouldn't even record the interrogation. It'd just be the cop come into court to say, hey, this person confessed to dealing cocaine, or this person confessed to a shooting. Wow. And it struck me as crazy. Like, we're in 2005. Yeah. We had phones and recording equipment back then. And so I was part of the effort to push, like, we need to be recording these interactions with people so that we can see what was actually said.
Yeah.
So, to piggyback on that point, I mean, there are some cops who are dirty, if you want to use that expression, or crooked, or have done improper things. Body cam has been one of the greatest developments in my area of law for two reasons. One, it holds the police accountable, and two, it eliminates the bullshit on my end. So, like, one thing that I have no tolerance for at this point in my career is being bullshitted by people, whoever they are, whether it's somebody in the system I work with, a client. Give it to me straight, and I'll do the same to you, and I do the same to everybody. So if a client is telling me a line of bullshit and a body cam is showing something else, that provides a pretty good way to just cut through the nonsense and say, look, here's what it is, okay? So I think body cam has really brought, they always say, like, light is the best disinfectant. Yeah. Light really, it's brought like a disinfectant onto law enforcement because their behavior is captured. Now, can they turn off the body cams? Yes. Are they still going to be crooked cops? Yes, there will be. But I found that it deters officers from acting improperly because they don't always know whose cams are running. Is this squad video on? Is this body cam on? So even if one cop might want to be crooked, he's got to think in the back of his head, yeah, but I'm not sure that these other 8 guys responding, they might not be, and they might be recording. So it does help reduce that.
Yeah, because I know the Seville case, man, like, that was a crazy case. Like, and actually the cop in that case, we went to school together. Yeah, he was a grade under me, the cop.
Okay.
So it just was surprising because he was in school. He was just a quiet kid.
Yeah,
like,
normal guy.
Normal guy, like. And Seville, I knew of Seville. I never met him personally, but like, that situation just was crazy and it destroyed the city. Like
Yeah,
for that
I
day,
know.
like,
And you think about that because it's important. Like the work that we do can have that effect
Yeah.
of either bringing the city together or splitting it apart. You know, speaking of high profile cases, I'm involved in a tremendously high profile case right now that's, you know, has those racial dynamics that's sort of splitting people apart. And part of our role as good lawyers trying to think about big picture things is making sure that we don't throw fuel on that fire. Even if we're representing a cop who did something improper towards a defendant, we got to do our job in court. We got to stay focused on where it matters and try to tamp down the public outcry and commotion.
yeah, yeah, definitely, man. Like we brought up rappers earlier. You know, like a big thing that some people like they have like guns in their video, or they have like
Yeah, I've seen that.
they have all type of guns, and they try to use their lyrics against them in the court. You know,
Yeah.
but
I've had that happen.
yeah.
Yeah.
What's your opinion on just like people accuse criminals? You know what I'm saying, using guns in their videos, music videos.
I think it's a really bad idea.
Okay.
I mean, if I were, but see, there's two ways to look at it. There's the way that the person who's doing the video looks at it of, I need to do what I can. This is my art.
Yeah.
And this is my living too. And there's certain things that I feel that I need to do in my artwork that will help generate revenue for me.
Yeah.
So I'm not analyzing it that way. I tell all any rap client, I say, my analysis is what is good or bad for you in a criminal context. And I can tell you this much. Yeah. Even if you put a disclaimer, these are props in the video, or you say, hey, it's just my art. The bottom line is anything you say can and will be used against you. That's called the Miranda warnings that cops give people when they want to interrogate them. So it's bizarre to me, and I maybe in some ways I'm an old man at 44 years old now already, but it's bizarre to me because when I started out 20 years ago, everybody concealed their behavior. Nobody wanted anyone to know what they were doing. Drug dealing clients of mine drove the shittiest cars. They had their money, but it was all square. They didn't wear fancy anything. Right. And all of a sudden I'm looking at today's world and I'm like, I got people who are blasting it on social media, putting it out for the whole world to see. And what do you think a prosecutor is going to do with that? They are going to use it. So if you are involved in illegal activity and you choose to then put a video on the internet, even if you're going to tell a jury, just think of what you're going to be telling a jury someday. Yeah. Well, folks, this is just my art and my performance. You better be able to substantiate where did that money come from? What show, so part of it is making sure if you are going to do that, that you're really documenting the source of your money so that if you get caught in something you weren't involved with, they can't use that against you. Yeah. But I think it's a bad idea. I mean, from a criminal defense perspective, I advise people all the time, keep your mouth shut. Don't broadcast your behavior. Don't tell people what you are into. The more people that know things, there's informants out there. Definitely. You start telling people what you're involved with, one person gets pinched in a case, they can easily inform on you.
Yeah, man. But like with the lyrics, I know it was a couple cases from artists they got convicted over the lyrics. But some people argument was like, okay, when I'm put on this rap, when I'm this rapper, this is my name is what blah blah blah. This is who I am when I'm this rapper. But when I'm
it's like a persona or something.
Would that hold in court?
Probably not.
Okay.
I mean, again, you're not going to convince. Look at it this way. As a defense attorney, I'm going to be unlikely to convince a prosecutor. Yeah. Let's take a step back. Okay. Your average prosecutor is go to the Milwaukee County Courthouse. Your average person who becomes a prosecutor in Milwaukee probably came out of either Marquette Law School or UW-Madison. Yeah. I don't know this. I don't know the numbers exactly, but I would be willing to bet that less than 5% of all lawyers graduating at any given time from those two law schools are black. I'm going to bet it's less than 5%. It's definitely less than 10%. Okay, it's a small fraction. Of the small fraction of graduating lawyers who are African American, even fewer of them are going to have had any experiences within a community that might accept that argument. Yeah, so even if they became a prosecutor, the point is like the prosecutors you're getting, the people who are coming out of law school, don't have those experiences. Like they didn't listen to that music. They won't be persuaded by that argument because they'll see it as, hey, this person is broadcasting exactly what they're involved with. You know, when you grew up listening to white rock and roll bands, okay, Guns N' Roses, Rolling Stones,
like
whatever, in Metallica, in Motley Crue, and these bands are all talking about the drinking and the drugs that they do. Guess what? It's because they were drinking and doing drugs. Right. That's why they were singing about it. So that person's upbringing affects how they then will respond to those arguments in court. So if I come to a prosecutor and say, hey, this is just his persona, like 99% of the time, they're never going to buy that. Now, that doesn't mean we couldn't persuade a jury. Okay. And that's why I always tell people, like, think about a jury as sort of your last line of defense against being convicted of something. 12 jurors can find a person not guilty. And so you could always make that argument to a jury, hey, this is just a persona. But again, you're making my argument harder as a defense attorney. Like, when we're accused of a crime, when a person's accused of a crime, you want there to be as little evidence as possible if you want to walk on the case. In order to make sure there's as little evidence as possible, you shouldn't be out there on the internet broadcasting what you're doing, especially if what you're saying you're doing in your video fits the narrative that the prosecutor has created against you.
Definitely. Yeah, man. One thing I want to say, man, like the younger generation, not everybody, because it's some young people that I know that they handle themselves right, but like it's just so stupid. Like
I would agree with you.
This generation, they'll literally kill somebody, put it in a story.
I agree.
And say, oh, smoking on this person.
I know.
And then wonder why everybody know, man, y'all police.
I know.
Y'all police. Nigga, you police.
Like, and you know what policing, you know what a lot of policing is these days? Like policing back in the day, and I'm only talking 20 years ago, used to involve tons of like undercover work. Yeah. They'd have to develop a guy, get him to blend in with drug dealers, fit in. It would take time and effort. You know what cops do half the time now? They just sit there. They just create a persona. And they just sit on social media. They're scrolling in. Oh, boom, boom, boom. So I've had people add me or follow me, and then I see the things they're doing. I've reached out to them and I've said, this is a bad idea. Like, even if you're not, I know you're trying to be clever about like, well, it's not me. I'm just making a statement about something. The reality is, like, there could be any number of officers who get access to that, and you're setting yourself up. And you're setting yourself up for something dangerous to happen to you. I think too often people don't think about the other dimension to it. Yes, you want to give yourself the best chance in court, but like, I know way too many young people that have been murdered, and it blows my mind that I just had a family reach out to me a couple of days ago that a guy who I'd been talking to for the longest time just killed for no reason. But partly that's, I would say, because things you're putting out there image-wise causes people to want to rob you or commit harm. So you got to think about two things. One is, am I really being smart with like setting myself up for the best defense in court? But two, am I creating a risk to myself in some way?
Definitely. Yeah, man. One question I have for you too, like, because you're a brilliant attorney, man. Big Meech case, you know what I'm saying? It's a big deal in our community too. He was found guilty of large-scale drug trafficking and money laundering. If you think, I think they gave him about 30 years. Like, do you think if you had Meech as a client, do you think you could possibly got his sentence reduced?
It's really hard to say. I've had people ask me that question before, and or ask me about that case, I should say. It's hard to say without knowing the specifics. The way I look at everything is, I always think I can get every person a good result. Nobody should do 30 years. I mean, unless you I mean, in 30 years is effectively a life sentence. And when you're talking those kinds of numbers, it really should be a serious murder case for those kinds of numbers. I do think we've gotten a little carried away in this country with using prison as the sort of solution to problems that are much more fundamental than that. When I have clients, one of the things we look at is, what are the ways we can persuade the decision makers, the prosecutor and the judge, to give them less time. If it is a case where they're going to be found guilty, we have a whole team of like, maybe this is sound boring, but like, we have a whole team of like mitigation consultants, people that we employ full time in our office, and their job included in the fee. Their job is to help my clients get drug treatment, help them get employment if they need help getting employment, community service, alcohol counseling, drug counseling, community service. Because there's all these other things that, like, look at the statistics. 95% of cases in the criminal justice system don't go to trial. Well, so what does that mean? That means that of those 95% of cases, some of them we get thrown out. Other ones are plea deals. And if it's a plea deal, we don't want our client to go to prison. Right. So the best way to keep someone out of prison, whether it's the Meech example or any other example, is to show the judge that this is a life worth saving, that 30 years represents a life sentence, and you really should reserve that for only the worst of the worst dangerous people.
Definitely. Yeah, man. Free Big Meech, man. Hopefully you get to come home soon, man. Hopefully you get something going on. Flea deal or something, man.
Yeah, that's crazy.
People love him. Hey, see, I do this with all the goats, man. Like anybody that's a goat to pull up to Mixtape Trappers, man. I do this with all the goats, man. I got something for you, man.
Oh, really?
Yeah. About to play a motherfucking game, man. This shit is called the Big Guys.
I saw this on the table before.
This shit is called the Big Guys box, man. You get 60 seconds with the box, but you got to answer each question in the box in 20 seconds or less. You ready?
20 seconds or less.
20 seconds less. Each question.
Ready.
Go ahead.
You ready?
Go ahead. First one, read out loud what it say.
About how much time would you receive if you got caught with 10 grits of woo?
Yeah.
If you have me as your lawyer, probation.
Go to the next one.
Name 3 Milwaukee rappers you represented that didn't cooperate.
Yeah, didn't.
Guapo.
Yeah.
Big Tone Right Street.
Yeah.
And Looney.
Yeah, let's go, man. Shout out them niggas. Go to the last one.
Who are your top 3 high profile defense attorneys of all time?
Yeah.
Drew Finling, maybe you've heard of him before down in Atlanta.
Yeah.
He and I served on a board of directors together. He's awesome.
Yeah.
Jerry Boyle back in the day was amazing. And
Yeah.
my mentor, Jim Shello, I can tell you about him. He's amazing.
Oh, I thought this nigga killed him.
Did I get it in 60 seconds? I think I did.
Hey, you beat it.
Got it done.
You beat it. He beat everything. He beat cases. He beat the box. He beat everything in his motherfucking way, man. Now, Tony, who you want to shout out before we get out of here, man?
I want to, with that last question, the top 3 high-profile defense attorneys of all time.
Yeah.
There was a guy named Jim Shello, who was the most brilliant defense attorney I've ever met. He died at 95 years old last year.
Wow.
And he took me under his wing about 10 years ago. And he was one of the most creative guys I ever met. He was a Milwaukee lawyer. He developed a defense to beat cocaine cases where he would hire a chemist to study the drugs and argue that it wasn't even cocaine.
Wow.
So his clients would get caught with 10, 20, 30 kilos of cocaine. They'd hire Jim. He'd get his chemist on board. The chemist would study the cocaine and say, oh, no, it's not cocaine. It's something else. And he was winning cases around the country and made a name for himself that way. So that's who brilliant guy. That's who I praise him for a lot of the influence that he gave me in my life and advice that he's provided. That's
nice, man. I'm gonna look him up too, man.
Yeah, just died last year. A wonderful man.
Wow. Dude, how the fuck was he doing that though?
He had a chemist who was able to look at the drugs. See, people hear like, so cocaine is illegal, right?
Yeah.
But only if it fits a particular definition. Like it has to have a molecular structure that's defined in the statute. Okay. So he'd see like, well, the molecular structure of this thing they found is slightly different, and so. However the hell he argued it back then, it was working around the country, and he made a name for himself.
Yeah, he's smart, man. I'm going to tell you off camera what he do. I'm going to tell you.
All right.
Hold on. Yeah, man. Johnny Cochran, he's one of my personal favorites.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Like, just
the OJ case.
The OJ case, that was huge. You know what I'm saying? Like, even though I was like 4 or 5 years old when it happened, you know what I'm saying? Like, that was the first lawyer I ever, like, even had knowledge of.
Yeah.
Period.
So can I make a statement about that?
Yeah.
One thing I thought would be a brilliant idea if we started this would be call it like the Black Lawyer Project. If we could produce in our community 20, just pick 20 high school kids.
Yeah.
Put them under the wings of 20 defense attorneys and say, this is your adopted lawyer. That we're going to produce the next generation of black lawyers. I think that would have a huge impact. Johnny Cochran was inspiring to me as a white kid. You know, like I remember growing up, my mom wasn't even a lawyer at that time. Yeah. And I was watching Johnny Cochran I wasn't thinking I want to be like my mom going to law school. I want to be like that guy.
Yeah.
And that was inspiring. And it made me realize, I don't know what his upbringing was, but it made me realize that if we were producing more black lawyers, we would have a better impact in every respect in our society. And I don't know how to do that because there's so few, it's so hard to make it to make it through high school, through college, through law school. And that's why I had thought of this like Black Lawyer Project, get 20 lawyers together to say, hey, we're identifying these kids and we're going to show them how to succeed in college, show them how to help review their papers they got to write, help prepare them for law school. Like if you had that mentorship, I think that's what's lacking. Yeah. You know, like if you're a kid right now growing up in inner city Milwaukee and you got some potential and you think academically I could become a lawyer someday, where do you even start? Like you don't know one. And I've had high school kids reach out to me on Instagram and say, can I come shadow you for a day? Can I come be a part of your office to learn what this is like? Because I think I'd like to do this someday. Yeah. They would kill it. Yeah. I mean, you get jurors in Milwaukee that are half African-American jury pools. Like we need more talented young African-American attorneys or men and women to want to become attorneys. I thought Johnny Cochran would have really promoted more. And maybe he did have an impact, but there needs to be a modern day Johnny Cochran for young black men and women to look at.
Definitely. Yeah, that was dope, man. That's a dope idea, man. Like, we might have to think of something.
We should talk about that.
Yeah,
That's something I've really been toying with. You just find 20 good defense lawyers, and each one of them, you don't have to provide financial sponsorship, but you got to provide academic sponsorship. Where this person, you will work with them all the way through law school. Right. And maybe they don't become a defense attorney. Maybe they become a judge.
Yeah.
Imagine that.
Right.
Or they become a prosecutor. Like, I would love it if we had more prosecutors, like to your point before, more prosecutors that come out of the environment that is being prosecuted. That would make a huge difference.
Definitely would.
Us suburban kids growing up in Waukesha, Brookfield, what do we know? Like, I learned it on the job.
Yeah, definitely. That's a dope point, man. You already know what it is, man. DJ Jerry, a.k.a. the voice of the streets. It's that Mixtape Trappers Radio, man. I got a goat in the building. Tony Cotton, what's happening?
What's up? Thanks for the shout out, Jerry.